Night Picks Recap Show. I'm John Franklin. This is a new show under the Fight Night Picks banner, but hopefully one you will like. The 250th numbered UFC event took place at UFC Apex in Las Vegas, Nevada. Probably the best collection of fights the Apex Center has or maybe ever will see. We had the greatest women's fighter of all time in the future of the bantamweight division on full display. So without further ado, let's get into it. Let's start at the top with the greatest female fighter of all time. She was in the cage on Saturday night. Amanda Nunes, who has the most complete resume of any fighter, male or female, took on 8-1 Felicia Spencer with one of her two belts, Nunes that is, one of her two belts on the line. Let's talk about, and listen, this is a new show, so we're going to be going through it and breaking things down. As we begin to talk about these fights, we're going to break it down to a couple of different things. We're going to talk about the stakes. We're going to talk about technique, and then we're talking about what's next. So we'll do that in a variety of ways. We'll try and give you guys as much graphics as we can. So let's talk about the stakes. For Amanda Nunes, honestly, more to lose than gain. She's already considered the woman's GOAT. This is, of course, an opportunity to showcase herself, make some money. But she quickly is running out of opponents, and there are two weight classes to choose from. For Spencer, the stakes couldn't be higher. Matt Serra, Chris Weidman, Holly Holm, they're all at some point going to be in the Hall of Fame. Matt Serra already is, based largely on one huge fight. Serra had GSP, Weidman had Anderson Silva, Holm had Ronda, and Felicia Spencer had Amanda Nunes in front of her. So, unfortunately, for Miss Spencer, her Hall of Fame jacket didn't get ordered on this night. The Lioness did what the Lioness does. She allowed her ground game to ensure that she had opportunities in the stand-up, and when the openings were there, she made them count. She landed big shots early and then pot-shotted her way to the commentary. She was pot-shotting her to an extent to where the commentary team had begun to talk about what's next for her in the fifth round, right? Spencer showed grit and a chin that we often don't see, but it meant little in the end. It was a typical Lioness-type performance, using her advanced ground prowess to open up the stand-up. So let's talk about, first let's talk about what folks on the on Fight Night Picks thought going in. Obviously, I mean, it's about as much of a landslide as you're going to see in terms of what people thought was going to happen in this one. So the numbers were 92% to 8%. The folks on Fight Night Picks thinking that the Lioness would win. Obviously, she won. So let's move this whole thing forward. All right, let's take a look at the divisions. Let's take a look at who's out there. Let's take a look at who's booked. You know, the beginning, we talk about what's next. The talk immediately is a crossover fight, right? Rogan brought up Claressa Shields. You know, Megan Anderson's name came up. Hopefully, you know, Anderson lost to Spencer, right? So maybe that was just a bad matchup for Megan Anderson. For Spencer, she's kind of in – so that's what Nunes is looking at. She's looking at 135 and 145-pound divisions that are – the 145-pound division particularly is thin, and she's cleared out pretty much both divisions. There's nobody really out there for her. So now let's spin it forward to Spencer. She's in Miesha Tate's boat. She has to wait around and hope someone gets Nunes, and she can get that person, because nothing she did tonight warrants a return engagement with the Lioness. You know, she was looking tough. She certainly was, like I said earlier, gritty, but she didn't overly impress in the way that you would think someone would, that would warrant this being the impetus for another fight. All right, let's take a look at the post-fight stats. Pretty straightforward stuff here. Amanda way out ahead in total number of strikes, way out ahead in significant strikes. I like Amanda's percentage here. She's at 59% of her 222 strikes. She landed 6 for 7 on takedowns. I mean, I'm saying what everybody else has said. She ran away with it, right? It wasn't even close. So she's the GOAT. And again, listen, let's talk about Nunes in one respect. This may be the time in her career when you start to look at, her and Nina Ansaroff have talked about having a family. So maybe this is the time in your career when that all goes down. All right, let's take a look at what the social media had to say last night. This one I got a kick out of. All right, so let's take a look at a couple of these. The first one is from Brett Okamoto. Just a straightforward tweet. Amanda Nunes defends her featherweight title. Looks like she just went on a light jog. This woman is incredible. I'm not really sure who is left for her. And then additionally, this one I thought was interesting as well. So this one talks about the fact that Nunes I don't understand when champions do this. I've never understood when champions do this. I don't know why you put the belt on someone you just beat. This is the thing they want most in life. This is their life's work. And then you're just going to put the belt on them for like what reason? I have no idea. But there we go. That's how that went down. So that means, listen, it's pretty much an open and shut case for Amanda Nunes and Felicia Spencer. She ran through it. Now, let's move on. Let's move on to Cody Garbrandt. Cody Garbrandt took on Raphael Assuncao. Let's take a look at the particulars there. There you have it. Again, Garbrandt took on Assuncao in this one, and really it was an interesting fight. Let's give it a proper introduction for our bantamweight champion. Cody Garbrandt is reeling. He's 11-3, but there are a lot of 11-3s, and Garbrandt had an undefeated record to start his career, and then 3 straight losses. He hasn't been in the octagon in 400 plus days, and hasn't won in the octagon since 2016. For Assuncao, he's on the shuffle as well, dropping his last 2, one to Cory Sandhagen, no crime in that. By decision, he got choked up by Marlon Moraes. Let's talk about the stakes. The stakes here are the top 5 of the division. Coming in, Assuncao was in it, and Garbrandt was out of it. With a win, Cody Garbrandt is relevant again. With a loss, he's keeping Gates on the train to Prelimville. All right, so let's talk about what went down. Before we do that, let's talk about what the Fight Night Picks folks thought. On this one, Fight Night Picks had this for Garbrandt a little closer than the previous fight, 62% to 38%. So most were picking Garbrandt on Fight Night Picks. All right, let's talk about what happened. Let's get into the technique of it. So Prelimville can wait, folks, because Cody Garbrandt gave us one for the highlight reel as he knocked Raphael Assuncao onto the Calvillo card. And with that came the birth of #calculated Cody. Garbrandt, who has long been accused of wanting the highlight finish and being overly emotional in his fights, seems to have put that behind him. From a technique perspective, here's what I saw. First, hats off to friend of the show, Mark Henry, who was in Garbrandt's corner. Listen, Garbrandt was what he was in the Cruz fight. Patient, super fast, footwork was on point. The commentary team said he seemed way faster than Assuncao. Now, there's 2 ways to process that. Either Cody Garbrandt's quick or Assuncao slow. Assuncao looks a little slow to me, although Garbrandt seemed to see his punches well and so be ready for it. Whether or not that's the case remains to be seen. Let's talk about what's next for Cody Garbrandt. On this one, I really want to dig a little bit deeper into the rankings of the UFC and take a look kind of at what is out there for him. We'll see who's booked, things like that. So let's go ahead and bring up the UFC rankings. All right, here we go. UFC rankings. Let's take a look at 135 pounds. It's right there in the middle. At the very top is Marlon Moraes. Next to him is Aljamain Sterling, Peter Yan, Sandhagen, Assuncao, who Garbrandt just beat. And then, you move your way down until you get to Cody Garbrandt at 9. So, all right. what I'm seeing here, and let's take another look at a different site just to kind of see who's booked. All right, so we'll go to world rankings. See who we got booked in this thing. All right, let's go ahead and bring that one up. Cejudo's out of there, obviously. Moraes, it doesn't look like. So Sandhagen fought last night. Sterling fought last night. Kelleher fought last night. Wineland, O'Malley. There are people that are 100% prisoners of the moment who are screaming for Cody Garbrandt to fight Sean O'Malley. I'm not in that camp. I like, if we're taking a real good look at this, there's a couple ways you could go. All right, you could rematch Dominic Cruz. It depends on what you want to do with Cody Garbrandt. If you want Cody Garbrandt to have a future moving forward, then I don't know that I would do the Cruz rematch, even though that would be a big fight. I like Cody Garbrandt and Cory Sandhagen here. Everyone else seems to be pretty locked up. You could do a Marlon Moraes fight. For me, I like Sandhagen and Garbrandt to be the fight. And then depending on what happens there, the winner ascends up into the Moraes Aldo Jan world, and the loser goes back down. As far as what's next for Assuncao, you can give him Cruz. You can give him any of these guys, Rivera, Dodson, guys he's fought before. I like Rob Font in that spot. He's fought Assuncao before, lost to him. I think that maybe he deserves a rematch. So that's what I would do with him, but you got a lot of choices. All right, let's see what social media had to say about all this. For this fight, social media was pretty – listen, Garbrandt – and I really didn't touch on this, and I apologize for that. I was impressed with Cody's footwork. I was impressed with the things that he can move forward with. You know, going into the matrix and becoming Anderson Silva and knocking Raphael Assuncao's block off is the kind of thing that got Cody Garbrandt in trouble in the past, not the thing that he should hang his hat on. So I'm worried that this highlight will lead to some problems for him in terms of his focus, in terms of his priorities. But listen, it got him paid, and it was a huge knockout. Let's take a look at some of this, some of the stuff people were saying in the world of social media. We'll start with the great Mark Coleman. Just damn, Ohio boy Cody no love in the game. Takes a real man to come back like that. Congratulations. Stalk the rest of the division. Climb all the way back up and be the effing champ. You shut MFers up. All right, here's my favorite one, though. This was it was a great tweet, and it was a great subtweet. So UFC posted that sort of who did it better with Assuncao, with Garbrandt and O'Malley, and we'll get to the O'Malley stuff here in a second. And O'Malley puts decent. I'm guessing he was talking about Garbrandt and sort of throwing a little bit of shade on him. But, you know, both of the guys look great. So, yeah, that's my takeaway with Cody Garbrandt is just and let's take a look at the stats before we get out of this fight. Decidedly in the camp of Cody Garbrandt. But again, quick. So you got him. I don't want to say decidedly. I take that back. 20-17, 19-17, but obviously he hit the big one. So, you know, the fight was Cody Garbrandt's. He looked good. He looked like he was moving his feet well to get Assuncao a little worn out, make him chase him. He knew he had the advantage, and he fought like it. So that kind of closes the book on the Cody Garbrandt fight. It's great to see him back. I happen to think Cody Garbrandt's a star. So it's good to see him back in the win column and as a relevant fighter again. And we move on. We move on next as we take a look at the card for the evening. The entire Fight Night Picks bout card. We move on to Aljamain Sterling and Cory Sandhagen. I got to admit, I was super excited about this fight going in. I am obviously not as excited about it at present, but, it is what it is. So let's take a look at let's skip right to what folks on Fight Night Picks thought. Then we'll give it a proper introduction. Here's the Fight Night Picks group. This really was a pretty split crowd here. 52% had it for Aljamain Sterling. 48% had it for Cory Sandhagen. And that's what you thought. That's what you thought going in. Let's give it a proper introduction. Coming into Saturday's fight with Cory Sandhagen, Aljamain Sterling was on the kind of roll that gets you title shots, winner of 4 in a row and not to bums. Brett Johns, Cody Stamann, Jimmy Rivera, Pedro Munoz. For his part, Cory Sandhagen has looked sharp as well. He's only dropped 1 fight in his 13 pro fights. He's beaten Mario Bautista, John Lineker, and co-headliner Pedro Munoz in the last 3. Listen, the stakes, I think I meant to put Raphael Assuncao in there, not Pedro Munoz. The stakes couldn't be higher for this one, okay? Both these guys are up near the top. With a win and a particularly decisive win, it would be hard to deny either fighter has a claim quiet as kept, Aljamain Sterling probably already has, to a bantamweight title shot. A loss here, neither falls all that far. These guys are up near the top of the food chain. Let's talk about how it went down. Listen, the Funk Master Flex tonight, he took Cory Sandhagen out quick, similar to what Conor McGregor did Donald Cerrone in this respect. He never really let Sandhagen get started. He rushed him, the fight went to the ground and choked him out quick, while Sandhagen was too dry to sort of wiggle out. It's hard to attribute this victory to anything other than the light turned green, and Sterling got his foot on the gas first and never took it off. Although a point can be made that Sandhagen isn't ready for the thin air at the very top of the division. I completely agree with that. We don't know really how prepared Cory Sandhagen is for the best fighters in the world at 135 pounds. This certainly wasn't an indication of whether he's prepared or not. In talking about what's next, and we'll take a peek. We've already looked at the 135-pound division in the rankings, so maybe we'll skip that. But in talking about what's next for these guys, for Sterling, it's obviously the winner of Jan Aldo. And I want to touch on this Aldo business real quick about this whole Jose Aldo doesn't deserve this fight. I've talked in the past on different podcasts about what I call the fast pass, right? You go to Disneyland, you buy the fast pass, you go straight to the front of the line. Certain guys have the fast pass for a variety of reasons, right? Some have the fast pass because of their name and their ability to draw money. Others have the fast pass because of their resume. Others have the fast pass because what Chael Sonnen calls the push and the mandate. Either the fans want them or the promotion wants them to win. So the example would be Greg Hardy, you could say, has a fast pass. Certainly not to the title, but they want him to be a relevant fighter in the UFC, so he's getting opportunities maybe he doesn't deserve yet. Jose Aldo has a fast pass, right? He has a name. He's a much bigger name than Petr Yan. He's the guy that's going to carry that fight. He's the A side of that fight. Also, the side note here being that maybe, Conor McGregor is always going to stay, and we'll get to Conor on early stoppage, but Conor McGregor is always going to be a guy who will keep tabs on the guys he's fought, right? When Max Holloway wins, he tweets. So maybe booking Aldo is to get Conor involved in the promotion of this somehow, whether it be fight night or leading up. Listen, that's an awful lot to gamble that Conor's going to just tweet something out. I do think it's Aldo's resume that got him to fight, but that's an added benefit for the UFC. So if we want to listen, I said I like the Garbrandt Sandhagen fight. I'll stick with that. I said I want Jan, the winner of Jan and Aldo, to get Sterling. I'll stick with that. I think that kind of really is where we stand on this. We can take a look at sort of how things were getting chopped up social media wise when it comes to Aljamain Sterling next. It's weird when I start to pick some of these, what catches my eye in terms of the tweets. So let's take a look at some of these. All right, the first one I liked was comes to us. I'm not doing really a great job of attributing these, by the way, but April at AY Preel She said the bantamweight division is king right now. Looking forward to the matchups that come to fruition due to last night's outcomes. I agree with her. Obviously, we just touched on one of them just now. Let's go on to another tweet. This one from Kel Dansby. Aldo is a bad man. Wrap that boy up quick. You can be followed at Kel Dansby. Let's move on to another tweet. Kelly Murphy, who is a producer on Luke Thomas's show, at KMurphy25. I'd like to make Aljo yelling, Dana, where you at? My alarm in the morning going forward. Great tweet by Kelly. Let's move on. MMA on point. Aljamain put the squeeze on Sandhagen like he was trying to open a commercial-sized jar of pickles. Aljo with the first round submission. Those are our boys over at On Point or MMA On Point. They can be followed at On Point MMA. Up next, this is Conor Rebush. Aljamain Sterling dedicates his career best win to the people in the streets protesting for justice. Justice could have been a hashtag Black Lives Matter there. That's a great sentiment by both Conor Rebush, who can be followed at Boxing Bush, and Aljamain Sterling. And lastly, we hit Cole Shelton. Wonder if they will use whiteout on the poster from Aldo to Aljo. They probably should. I saw that flying around a lot of social media during this fight as well. All right, let's move on, guys. Let's move on to Neil Magny and Antonio Rocco Martin. I'm going to give this the respect it's due. With that being said, I wasn't overly impressed with the fight. So let's chop it up. Let me hit you guys with some Antonio Rocco Martin, Neil Magny statistics while I do the intro. So, and again, if you're expecting a lot from this intro, you will be disappointed. Up next was Neil Magny and Rocco Martin. I'll be honest, I don't see the star power in this one. I could never see either fighter holding a UFC belt. This, to me, with all due respect to both fighters, is where you get a beer, hit the bathroom, make a sandwich, you name it. This is a break fight. But listen, these guys both are very impressive at this weight. Magny is third all-time in welterweight victories, and Martin is 8-1 at this weight. The stakes for this fight, Ranking MMA had these guys at 16 and 19 respectively. So this fight is basically a fight to get you into the top 15. Let's take a quick peek at the rankings in at 170 pounds for the UFC. At 170 pounds for the UFC, also neither fighter is a top 15 fighter according to what I'm seeing. All right, so this fight didn't excite me. There wasn't much there. It's virtually a clean sweep by Magny. A lot of grabbing, a lot of holding, no real big spots. If you got more, listen, if you think I didn't give this the attention it deserved, I was off doing other things, feel free to blast me in the comments. I'm happy to hear it. But I was still recovering from the Sugar Sean fight, which we'll get to here in a second. Let's see if we have anything on social media for Neil Magny. I will give you the stats. We have one piece of social media. So let's go ahead and hit you with the stats first, and then we'll get into the social media of it all. Here's the post-fight stats. Busy night for Magny with the win, 82 out of 130 for 63%. Significant strikes, 64 out of 110. A takedown for Rocco Martin, 0 for 6 for Neil Magny. Let's move on over to that social media piece, which is, I think it's a number. It's a stat. It's a good stat. But again, guys, listen, you know, I've never been a guy that says I'm a Neil Magny fan. And so the win by Neil Magny puts him alone in second place for most wins in UFC welterweight history. He trails only GSP and broke a tie with Matt Hughes, Matt Brown, Thiago Alves. He had that one big year where he was like, I believe, 5-0, breaking the record for times in the cage or tying it. Neil Magny is a less exciting Donald Cerrone to me. That's how I process him. Doesn't mean that's the book on him. It means that's what I look. When I see him, that's what I see. I don't know if I got into what the fans thought on this one, so I'll hit you with it real quick. It was a 60-40 split in the favor of Magny, and it kind of went that way. All right, let's move on to Sugar Sean. Sugar Sean O'Malley had a good night. he's one of these guys, and I'll go ahead and give you the particulars of this fight in terms of a tail of the tape while I do the intro. But listen, there's a lot to be said about this one. Well. Sugar Sean O'Malley, let's talk about what he's bringing to the table. He's undefeated, ton of personality, dynamite in his hands. He's a promoter's dream and an opponent's nightmare. Eddie Wineland is the most traveled bantamweight in UFC WEC history, brings a ton of experience to the cage. You could make an argument that Wineland is top 5, top 10 bantamweight of all time. You can make that argument. Let's talk about the stakes. It was said on the telecast that Sean O'Malley doesn't have a number next to his name, and maybe he should. This is the type of fight that may ease you towards a number by your name. Let's look real quick at what the guys on Fight Night Picks thought in terms of the fans. The fans, listen, they're on the same page they kind of were on a Nunes fight. They were big into Sean O'Malley, 92% to 8%. And listen, O'Malley did not disappoint. The technique of it all, I don't know if you could have had a much better performance than O'Malley had. The footwork was there. He mixed his strikes well, both in level and in origin, throwing from both sides with hands and feet. It was a knockout. And many people will point to the feint that opened it up. He feinted an uppercut and then threw that straight right. Will Brooks had a great tweet about what dropped Eddie Wineland's hands being a body kick. But some guys, they just have that power boost when they need it. Sean O'Malley can reach back and find that fastball when he wants it. He's big in big spots. Listen, it's not like Eddie Wineland's never been stopped. I'm not saying that. But listen, the O'Malley kid's got magic in his hands. He does. He can get us based on how he looks. He just has, it's a leverage, it's a torque. He has one of those things that you can train and improve by percentages. You can get more power, right? You are not at the mercy of the power that you were born with, if you're a fighter or anyone else for that matter. But if you were born with that magic, you have it, and it's there when you need it, and you just know how to throw that knockout punch. You know how to find someone's button like others cannot. All right, so let's talk about moving forward. All right, we've been all over the 135-pound division tonight. I don't want to downplay what O'Malley did here, but I'm just not sure that he's ready to be ranked yet. So, let's put this in proper context, right? So let's go to Ranking MMA, because they tend to be a little bit more, I think they dig a little bit deeper into the division than, say, the UFC does. So again, O'Malley is not ranked based on the UFC. Let's take a look at what Ranking MMA has to say about him. All right, as we're moving along, he's 20 for Ranking MMA. Okay, so if we look at the guys ahead of him, Simone, Vera, Cody Stamann, who had a win this evening, Rob Font, John Dodson, Jimmy Rivera, Assuncao, Cruz. I'm not ready to put him in there with Rivera, Assuncao. People are talking about Garbrandt. That's prisoner moment stuff. Let's just disregard that. I'm not ready to get him up there yet. But I see some interesting fights. I think he's evolved past Ricky Simone, although if you're a Ricky Simone fan, I could see how you making the case for that fight. I could see an Marlon Vera fight. Yadong Song, I could see that fight, being that Song defeated Vera. He drew with Cody Stamann. I'm all over the place with Cody Stamann's name. I like him against Rob Font. Font beat Perez, beat Ricky Simone. I like the matchup there. I like the stand-up. I think Font sort of provides a lot of interesting looks for O'Malley. If I was the UFC and I was put in charge of matchmaking, I'd be trying to get Rob Font in there with Sean O'Malley. And then we see where we go from there for both guys, right? If Rob Font or Sean O'Malley can get a decisive victory there, I'm cool putting him in top 10. I'm ready for that if they can beat one another. But I could understand the apprehension, right? Now let's look at the UFC rankings to see who they're dealing with. UFC is even higher on Rob Font than ranking MMA is. So UFC has Rob Font presently at 10. Okay, so let's do it. Let's let the term gatekeeper is thrown around in odd ways, but let's say Rob Font's gatekeeping the top 10 right now. Right, he's a 10th fighter, 10th ranked fighter. Let's do that. Sean O'Malley can beat Rob Font. He's a top 10 guy. If he can, he's not. Simple as that. I could see putting him in there with a guy like Dodson, who presents a lot of different looks as well. But I really like that Rob Font, Sean O'Malley fight. Let's get to it. This kid wants to get paid. This kid's got some urgency. He lost 2 years of his career to arguably some disagreeable reasons. So let's get him to it. Let's take a look at the post-fight stats. I mean, I'll do it because that's what we do, but there's not a lot here. Listen, 13, one of them obviously being the big one. Only 4 strikes for Eddie Wineland. The kid got in there and he got to work quick. He did what he had to do, and here we are. Let's talk about the social media. Guys, we touched on one of the great tweets earlier. Let's get into some of the stuff. Some friends of the show, if you will, had some things to say. Let's talk about our man Kairos. I think he meant to say don't let the rainbow-colored hair surprise you. Sean O'Malley is a psychopath. All right, let's talk about Ant Walker. Watching that makes me wonder what he'd look like without sitting out for 2 years. I love that tweet. I wonder that as well. Although you could make a case he committed himself to his career for those 2 years. He was in the gym a lot. He may have improved more in the 2 years than he would have if he had to go through whatever it takes to go through the whole fighting aspect of things. And lastly, one of the best coaches there is out there, Dean Thomas, said that was a perfectly thrown right hand. It's hard to argue with, especially when someone like Dean says it. It must be true. So, listen, there's a lot to love about this kid. Like I said, promoter's dream, opponent's nightmare. Sean O'Malley is going places. Only Sean O'Malley could pull the rainbow-colored hair off, put it in cornrows. I mean, the kid's got it. I'm not saying anything that you guys don't already know, but he's got it. We'll just leave it at that. All right, we're going to get through these prelims a lot quicker than we got through the main card for obvious reasons, although there was some really impressive fights on the prelims as well. It was a good night. It was a good night for fights. Let's take a look at the Fight Night Picks bout card. So we're going to go down this way. We kind of, we're going top to bottom. Next is going to be Caceres and Hooper, Heinisch and Meerschaert, Stamann and Kelleher, Byrd and Pitolo, and then we'll hit the early prelims much, much quicker. All right, so let's talk about Alex Caceres and Chase Hooper. Here's the tail of the tape. The thing that they don't tell you in this tail of the tape, and just by looking at it, right? 9-0, he's 9 fights, 15-12, he's got 27 fights. The gap in experience between these two fighters, and listen, side note, 2 great nicknames, by the way, Chase the Dream and Bruce Leroy. The gap in experience was very evident. And I had some fun on social media in terms of saying that, like, Caceres looked like a stepdad whipping his stepson's ass. There are, you just could tell very early in this fight what was what and who was who. And that doesn't mean that Chase Hooper is done. It just means that maybe we fell in love with this kid a little bit faster than we should have. Let's see if Fight Night Picks fell in love with him. Yeah, they did. 80% wise. 80% of people that were responded to Craig Allen on Instagram thought it was Chase's fight. Now, there's a couple of reasons for that. First and foremost, we were very much overreacting to how good Chase Hooper was. Quiet as kept, we may have been seeing some Sean O'Malley and Chase Hooper. Sean O'Malley kind of busted on the scene as an unassuming guy that one-punch knocked out guys. That's what I think. I think that people were projecting Sean O'Malley's attributes onto Chase Hooper. It's a little too fast. Also, listen, Alex Caceres, for everything that he is, I think he's a great fighter. He's from the area here in Phoenix. He can be streaky. He sometimes is more motivated than other times. So I think that it was a little bit of shade being thrown at Alex Caceres, a little bit too much hype for Chase Hooper. It was all Caceres' fight. Let's take a look at the numbers. There's nowhere here that you could build a case that Chase Hooper was in this fight. I mean, I'm a big guy on percentages in terms of strikes, not just in volume. 61% Caceres was hitting that, and he was cracking this kid. Chase showed he had a chin, which is one of those things where it's like, okay, he's got a chin. That's a polite way of saying you're doing a good job of getting your ass whipped, right? So he was getting blasted, and there was no doubt at any point in that fight who was running things, who was running the show, who was playing the music that we were dancing to here. This was all Caceres throughout. Okay, let's take a look at some what could be next for these guys. And there's a lot to be said on social media, but in terms of what's next for these two gentlemen, they're 145-pound fighters. So let's take a look at the 145-pound division. We'll look at the ranking MMA because, again, that probably has a better chance of getting us to see Alex Caceres' name than the UFC rankings. So we'll bring up the rankings for Rankings MMA. I mean, listen, there's some guys that are low down this list who are guys that would give trouble to Caceres, right? Listen, Caceres lost to Chrome Gracie. Herbert Burns is in there. Listen, I'm looking at some names here. I don't necessarily agree that Alex Caceres is the 39th ranked 145-pounder in the UFC. I don't agree with that. But, okay, if that's what we're dealing with, then let's deal with it. What's next for him? Herbert Burns. They're kind of sitting near each other there in the rankings. If you want to keep it to the guys that are kind of on the same wavelength, Hakeem Dawodu, I'm okay with those fights. Listen, guys, something you're going to learn about me is I don't really get too deep into what's next for prelim fighters. What's next for a prelim fighter is getting their ass off the prelims. So, to me, I'm okay with that. Chase Hooper, you need to send him a fighter that's not as good as Alex Caceres, clearly, which puts you pretty far down the list. So, Matt Sales, I mean, he needs to get some experience. He needs to get in there with a guy that he's got, listen, Coratillo and Spike Carlisle are 51st and 52nd ranked, respectively. They just fought. I could see him in there with guys like that. Maybe you give him Spike Carlisle, see what he's got. Spike keeps the pace. Let's take a look at social media, see what they had to say about this fight. I mean, a lot was said about this fight. Let's try this again. Mike Heck says Chase has got a chin on him, and that's for sure. This fight with Caceres will be a crucial chapter in his story. He's already got the attitude for it. Now he will have some more pivotal experience needed to take steps forward in his evolution as a fighter. Couldn't agree with Mike more. Ant Walker. Chase Hooper says that as a kid he looked up to Nick Baldwin. That's funny. Nick Baldwin, if you don't know, is a very, very young MMA media member. Adam Martin, Caceres looks phenomenal so far. Looks fast and really sharp striking. Looks like this might just be a little too much too soon for Chase Hooper. Again, agree completely. Sean Ross Sapp. Said that Caceres is beating Hooper's ass and is somehow beginning to lose this fight. That I disagree with. For his part, Chase Hooper had a tweet. Let's take a look at Chase's tweet. He said, fought a veteran with more UFC fights than I have years of being alive, and I went the distance with him. It was a tough fight. I needed a solid game plan and good defense. Now it's time to suck it up, get back to the gym, work on the stand-up, and move on to the next one. That's the attitude you want to see the kid take. I mean, that's perfect, right? So let's move on to the next fight. The next fight on the docket is Meerschaert and Heinisch. This was a quick one. We'll go right to the post-fight stats. No need to really get too deep into this one, although I will give you the what the Fight Night folks thought going into this one, just to see kind of how we are looking consistency. Consistency-wise, how the Fight Night folks are doing. 67% had Heinisch, 33% had Meerschaert. I don't want to be dismissive of Heinisch's situation. Obviously, had a corner man who had a false positive for COVID-19, and that kind of was, the cloud over the fight situation for him. He came out victorious. He did it very quickly. Let's go to the stats, and also in the process give you the result. The result is Ian Heinisch defeated Gerald Meerschaert by TKO via strikes in round 1. Quickly, 81% through 27, hit 22 of them. Meerschaert only had a chance to get 3 off himself, and that was that. Big night, big TKO, huge backflip. Ian Heinisch looking good. We're not going to get into what's next for these guys. For me, although Heinisch is ranked 13th, so maybe he does deserve a little bit more of our time. Let's get into the rankings. Ian Heinisch is a middleweight fighter. So obviously I don't see him calling out Israel Adesanya anytime soon. That's certainly not going to happen. But we got to find a fight for the guy. We'll find a fight for the guy, and then we'll sort of go from there. All right, let's start with Rankings MMA. All right, so we got Ian Heinisch on Rankings MMA at 15, a little bit lower than the UFC had him. So let's talk about his last 3. He had Omari Akhmedov, Derek Brunson, Antonio Carlos Jr. So he was on a 2-fight skid coming into this. Now he wins. He's in the top 15. What do we do next? I mean, typically you want to keep the guys around him. So I don't hate a Tavares fight. Uriah Hall would be an interesting fight. I don't want to put him in there with Shabazian, although it might be interesting to see him in there with Shabazian. For me, if I'm choosing Brad Tavares or Uriah Hall. That's my take on it. All right, let's move on to the next fight. We'll head back to the Fight Night picks bout card just to see sort of where we're at in all this. Our Fight Night picks bout card. We've done Caceres and Hooper. We've done Heinisch and Meerschaert. Cody Stamann. I keep saying Stamann. Cody Stamann and Brian Kelleher and Charles Byrd and Maki Pitolo we'll get to next. Let's get to the Stamann-Kelleher fight. A lot going into this fight. Obviously, a lot on the heart and the mind of Stamann after losing his brother. And he looked good. I mean, it was a good performance. I kind of felt like I wasn't seeing out of Kelleher what I wanted to see. This may be where I have to go even to some notes for this fight. I thought, I don't know, I saw openings for Kelleher, and I just didn't see him taking advantage of them. It just seemed like, and you see this a lot of times, where it's a situation where, like when Greg Hardy fought Walt Harris, you're going into the fight knowing that you're not the popular guy. You know that no one wants you to win. So I don't want to say that it makes you hesitant to pull the trigger, but it has to affect you mentally. You know, it's not that you want to lose, but it's not as much fun to win, if that makes sense. So let's look at what Fight Night Picks thought about this fight. 60-40 in the certainly not overly decidedly for Cody Stamann, but you know, he's definitely got the nod here from the Fight Night Picks folks. So now let's see how it played out. Take a look at some post-fight stats. It played out with number 12 bantamweight Cody Stamann defeating Brian Kelleher by unanimous decision, 30-27s across the board. I mean, listen, the accuracy was there at 55%. The volume was there through 209, landed 115, 50% on his takedowns. The kid was sharp. The kid was present. The kid had a big fight. He wanted to do well, and he did well. So let's move on to some of the social media stuff. For this fight, obviously a lot of it was folks were tweeting with a heavy heart. We'll start with Mike Heck. Cody Stamann looked good, looked great tonight, and Brian Kelleher proved he can hang with the top 15 at 135 pounds. What an emotional moment this has to be for Cody right now, I'm sure 10 times more than he's showing. Up next, we have Nick Baldwin. Hell of a statement from Ian Heinisch. We don't have Nick Baldwin next. We have, I apologize, we have Richard Mann, who, listen, some of these guys are people that I have followed for a while. Some I haven't. Richard Mann is really a good follow. I want to say, let me do some quick research here on Richard Mann, because I think that he is I want to say he's affiliated with ESPN, maybe? Let's see what Richard Mann does. He is, yep, MMA stat work for ESPN, MMA, and Fight Metric. He's a good follow, guys. Follow Richard Mann. Cody Stamann and Brian Kelleher attempted basically the same number of significant strikes, 179 for Stamann, 177 for Kelleher. However, Stamann landed 49%, while his opponent only landed 32%. Great stat. In terms of the percentages there. So, again, he's a great follow. Listen, Cody's had it rough, and when someone has it rough, it's good for them to have a great night. Cody had a great night, and he's off to the races. In terms of what's next, let's take a look at 135 pounds. You know, all right, guys, you're not going to be happy with this. I'll just tell you straight out. Here's the rankings for the UFC. He's 12th ranked fighter. What about Cruz? I mean, is it time for a guy like Cody Stamann to get a fight like Dominic Cruz? They're right there near in the rankings. Cruz just had a huge fight. Obviously, the fight was out of where he's ranked. But I like the fight. I like to see if, you know, I think it's time for, you know, in wrestling they say, you know, you're putting someone over, right? A fighter needs the push from Ric Flair or Hulk Hogan or whoever to get. Maybe it's time for Dominic Cruz to put Cody Stamann on the map, right? Maybe it's time for him to see to it that that Cody is a better known fighter. You know, that's what your job is, right? Your job is to fight to the best of your abilities until you can no longer fight, and at which time you fight guys that are on the come up. And you know, nobody's telling them to take a fall or to just roll over like they would in pro wrestling. But you got to give Cody Stamann the opportunity to get your shine, right? Or walk away. One or the other. It's your choice. All right, let's move on. The next fight up we talked about is Coconut Bombs. Coconut Bombs, Maki Pitolo. Let's take a look at Coconut Bombs and Kid Dynamite. Listen, I like Charles Byrd. I think he's a good fighter. He is a team captain at Fortis MMA, which is one of the better, if not best gyms out there. which tells you all you need to know about Charles Byrd, right? He's team captain of a very high-level gym. Calling yourself Kid Dynamite takes some guts. And, Mike Tyson was Kid Dynamite. So it takes some guts to call yourself that, but he did it. Let's talk about what we liked here. I really liked, and first let's see what the Fight Night folks thought. Then we'll get into the finish. Not a lot on social media for this one, so we'll skip that. 64% had Charles Byrd, right? Sit on that for a second. Kid Dynamite getting the nod, at least from the Fight Night Picks folks. And let me be very clear when I say the Fight Night Picks folks. These are the fans. These are people on Instagram that are interacting with Craig and the Fight Night Picks and Matt. In the future on this show, I hope to bring you guys the more of the what the Fight Night Picks guys have picked and where they sat. So let's talk about the finish. The finish came for Mr. Byrd or Mr. Pitolo, depending on how you look at it. The finish came in the second round, 110 of it. Pitolo got the TKO. Here's what I liked in this one, all right? And spoiler alert, we're not going to go too far into what's next for these guys. But I liked – I'm an old boxing guy who got into MMA after I had enjoyed boxing for a while. There was a time when they were even in my life. I'm more of an MMA guy now. I like when guys work the body. I like it in boxing. You don't see it as much in MMA. Maki Pitolo worked the body. I mean, he was digging into Charles Byrd. And I have a theory, and it's not been backed up. I haven't seen anything. No one said it yet that I've heard. I'm not saying no one said it, that I've heard. I think that Byrd, because what happened was when Byrd went down, it seemed like he had given up, like he was done. And I think that that's because of the body work. I don't think anything other than that. I don't think he was like mentally beaten or I don't know that he had what's the word? It's I can't believe I can't find the word. It's a simple one, but he wasn't broken. I don't think he was broken by Maki Pitolo. Well, with the exception of if you're saying that the body work broke him. I think the body work is what led to Byrd hitting the canvas and being like, enough's enough. He didn't completely shell up, but he wasn't looking, to me, to really be a part of the fight any longer. So Pitolo looked good. He's a guy who is fun. He's got a fun nickname. He fights. He goes there and throws. It's good to have guys like Maki Pitolo around who have cool nicknames and you like the way they fight. It keeps things interesting. He is a 185-pound fighter. Pitolo is. I don't know that he's kicking anybody's door down in the top 15 or 20 anytime soon. If we're looking at rankings MMA, my guess would be that he is way, 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 way down the list. I've been scrolling for a minute here. I've yet to see him unless he's much, much higher than I think he deserves to be. So, again, moving forward, we're not going to have much to say about Maki Pitolo. I don't even see him here in the top 50. And maybe I'm missing something. Anyway, we move on. Heading back to our Fight Night Picks fight card. We move on to the early prelims, right? And guys, I got to tell you, you're getting a real treat here because I am not an early prelim guy. I am not a prelim guy. Hopefully we'll either get someone on the show. Listen, I should probably watch more prelim fights than I do. But, I know you guys love prelims. If the demand calls for me to watch more prelims, then I'll watch more prelims. But you guys got a real treat because I watched them all. So next we'll talk about Perez and Formiga, then Menifield Clark, Burns and Dunham, and we'll get out of here. So let's start with Perez and Formiga. Let's take a look real quick at the tail of the tape. Tail of the tape is 23-5 for Alex Perez, 23-7 for Jussier Formiga. Listen, Formiga's a guy who is kind of a guy that doesn't get talked about as much as he should. He's been up near the top of the division for a long time. He's definitely a game fighter. But at this stage in the game, he looks to be a guy that's going to start, being a guy that goes on people's resumes. So we'll take a look at the Fight Night Picks thoughts. They had it all for Formiga, 75% to 25%. It was, I apologize. There you go, 75% to 25%, all for Jussier and Formiga. So let's get to how it all went down. It went down pretty much for Alex Perez. I mean, it was Alex Perez's fight. I won't say pretty much. What I mean is it went down for Alex Perez. He started going after Formiga's legs and really just kicking the living hell out of him. And in the end, Formiga just couldn't handle it. He just took those legs. I mean, I haven't seen that since the most impressive I've ever seen someone go after some legs is Justin Gaethje kicked Luis Palomino's legs straight off in their first fight. Just kept kicking him and kicking him and kicking him. And the thing that I admire about Perez and the thing that I admire about Gaethje is that what you have to do when you are committed to taking a man's legs out is it's a risk you're taking because, the adjustments are there. You have to, one, establish the kick early in the fight to start to make it so that it's a problem for the guy, right? So you got to hit him with good 2, 3, 4 really good shots to let him know, all right, this guy's going to be kicking me tonight. Then he's going to do one or two things. He's going to start checking him or he's going to switch stances. What you then have to do, which is what Alex Perez did, is you have to figure out a way to take his focus off your legs and his legs with your hands. And Perez was finding some strikes, was finding some ways to disguise the fact that he was going to continue to beat Jussier Formiga's legs. And he did. He did it spectacularly. So, he had an incredible showing. We'll get to who got paid in a little bit. If memory serves correctly, Alex Perez got paid, but we'll get to the particulars of it here in a sec. Let's take a look at some of the social media on this. We'll start with let's start with Richard Mann. Richard Mann, Alex Perez outlanded Jussier Formiga 15-1 on significant leg strikes, scored a pair of knockdowns, and finished in the very first round. Then he subtweeted or quote tweeted himself, Formiga has now been outlanded 59-16 on significant leg strikes in his 16-fight UFC career. So the question I would ask is this becoming a problem for Jussier Formiga? Are guys beginning to scout him and know that this is an opening for him? And is this sort of the thing that leads to the demise of his career, if not corrected? All right, let's move on to the next tweet. This guy, if you guys aren't following this kid, follow him. He's Aiden_MMA. He does a pretty good job. And I'm going to try and get him on the podcast in the near future. He does a good job at sort of talking about what we got. All right, physicality is really telling. Formiga's clinch counter was stopped by Perez simply pushing through the punches. Speed was too much. Perez's throwaway jab was cool, but Formiga was already developing counters. Any step in was countered with a cross hook, but he was too hesitant with it. So that's, fantastic analysis. In the end, it becomes about what can Perez do again to disguise the kicks. That's kind of what the game plan was. That's what he was trying to get done. All right, and we'll finish up with Michael Carroll. MJC flipped a script. He is another guy I believe is affiliated now or was with Fight Metric and by extension the UFC statistics. Alex Perez finishes Jussier Formiga with leg kicks and becomes the 11th fighter in UFC history to earn such a finish. 12 such finishes overall. Barbosa did it twice. So great tweet there by MJC. Flipped the script, and we move on. We move on as we get back to the UFC Fight Night picks card. We move on to Alonzo Menifield and Devin Clark. Let's start with the Fight Night picks folks on this one. So we're going to see what they had to say about this. Fight Night picks folks were very, very decidedly with Alonzo Menifield. Big over Brown Bear Devin Clark. So let's see how it played out. Well, the way it played out is in the favor of Devin Clark. Devin Clark significantly, I repeat, significantly outstruck Alonzo Menifield. And I want to talk to you guys about this whole fast starter coming out, hurricane, weathering the storm of it all. Okay? So, because that's what happened here, right? 150, look at the percentages. 150 of 198 strikes, Devin Clark hit, 76%. 79 of 124, 64%. I mean, listen, Menifield was hitting at a 52% clip. There's no shame in that, right? But he just was getting outstruck. I want to talk about this whole coming out and being a whirlwind and these guys that got a lot of bulk. Listen, Rogan's been saying for 100 years, if you're a big muscular guy, it takes a lot of oxygen to those muscles and lactic acid and all of that. So I don't doubt there was some of that at play. Here's the problem. If you are a guy like Alonzo Menifield, and you come out and you're able to bully most fighters, right? And then you reach a point in your career where you found a guy who you can't bully, right? He couldn't bully Devin Clark. He tried, he couldn't. Devin Clark was smart to keep him close. Devin Clark, although I thought Menifield was good in the clinches early, Clark was good to be more effective at distance, but still kind of, he figured out a good way to nullify what Menifield does well. Now, here's the problem. You're Alonzo Menifield. You try and bum rush a guy in the first round. It doesn't work, but you put forth the energy, and now you're starting to be a little bit tired. You're tired in the second round, and so maybe he wins the first round, maybe you win it, who knows? He for sure wins the second round because you're tired from the first round. Now it's the third round and you're 2 rounds down. So when we talk about fighters being efficient, when we talk about guys understanding what it is that they have to do and how long they should take to do it, guys who it seems like are in positions to go for the victory and they step it back. There's a lot to be said about energy management and the efficiency in which you fight. Only the fighter truly knows how much he has to give or doesn't have to give. And the way that he kind of plays the game, it's not like boxing. Again, I'm a huge boxing head, right? Or used to be. In boxing, the good fighters, right? Mayweather, De La Hoya, Hopkins particularly. These guys figured out ways to take rounds off. And what the fight became was, if it's a 10-round or 12-round fight, who was more effective in their surges, right? So if you're a guy like De La Hoya and you come out and take the first 3 rounds, you might rest the 4th so that you win the 5th. The thing is how much are you losing by when you're resting? And in boxing, a big thing is, can I win rounds while resting, right? Can I keep it close? Is it worth it to rest the 4th to win the 5th and the 6th? It's a hell of a gamble. In MMA, it's different because it's not as easy to rest in MMA. It's not as easy to find places to quote unquote hide. You can find a place to hide in a boxing ring. It's not as easy in MMA. So with that being said, this is why guys like Menifield have to figure out their efficiency if they want to have long careers. Long story short, to encapsulate the point I was making there and bring it back to Alonzo Menifield, efficiency is key. Let's talk a little bit about the social media. The social media on this one I liked. Because it was about Devin Clark's dad. I think I just have the one tweet. Devin Clark's dad is a PED, said Ant Walker, and Tom Taylor replied, performance-enhancing dad. I like that tweet. That was good. So, all right. Last fight of the podcast, first fight of the night was, as we reference again, our fight night picks bout card. Herbert Burns taking on Evan Dunham. You've probably seen this all over the place. I will be another person to repeat it. Gilbert Burns and Herbert Burns were the first brothers to be to get back-to-back victories, even though those victories were not on the same card. That makes sense. So let's see, meaning Burns won the last fight of the last card. Gilbert, that is. Herbert won the first fight of this card. So they won back-to-back victories, but they were obviously not on the same card. All right, let's see what Fight Night Picks had to say about this fight. They had to say that they thought it was Herbert Burns. 88% of them to 12% for Evan Dunham. Let's see how it played out. It played out just like the Fight Night Picks folks thought. Herbert, the Blaze Burns, defeating Evan Dunham by submission via rear naked choke. Very quickly, not a lot of strikes were thrown. 8 and 4 respectively. Burns gets a win. I am not going to get into all of the particulars of what's next for these guys. They were the first fight of the night. This may be the only podcast where you guys see the first fight of the night. And in terms of me going over prelims, or I may do it every week. Who's to say? All right, guys, there you have it. The first episode of the fight. Oh, I almost forgot that you don't have it. Let's talk about a few of the extra stuff. All right. So in past recap shows I've done, I've always had like the extra stuff, the stuff that like, some stuff about the housekeeping, some stuff I noticed, some kind of stuff that goes in like the margins of the notebook. So let's get to that. Let's talk about who won the night. All right, there's 4 candidates here. Cody Garbrandt, Sean O'Malley, Cody Stamann, and Alex Perez. I don't want to take away from any of these guys. For each of them, they won the night for themselves, right? So they can all hang their hat on that. The person I think you're talking the most about leaving this card, for me, it's a toss-up between Cody Garbrandt and Sean O'Malley. I think Sean O'Malley will probably do more with it in terms of social media, in terms of putting himself out there. But I think it probably meant more for Cody Garbrandt in terms of moving forward. He made himself a relevant fighter at 135 pounds again. Sean O'Malley was already a relevant fighter. Had he won or lost, he wouldn't have really lost much ground. Cody Garbrandt has now put himself, and this is going to sound crazy to say, but he's put himself 2 fights away from a title shot because he's the next champ, a former champ. So for me, Cody Garbrandt won the night, but I could see the Sean O'Malley argument. Here's a tough one. Who do you least want to be today between Raphael Assuncao and Eddie Wineland? For me, I think Assuncao got knocked. I mean, he was shook. He thought he was in an earthquake, for Christ's sakes. To me, I think that Eddie Wineland got cracked and he was out and, whatever. They're going to show that highlight a lot. So he's not crazy about it. But I've never seen anything like what Cody Garbrandt did. And I've seen straight right hands flatten guys. I've seen walk-offs. But what Cody Garbrandt did was something special. So I would at least want to be Raphael Assuncao. Lost, but you still feel good. Chase Hooper. Listen, bud, you're going to take the opportunities that are given to you. So there's no shame in there's no shame in losing a fight that shouldn't have been booked in the first place. So that's what we got for Chase. In the margins, listen, I think Anik, Rogan, and DC are the A-team. I think they all like each other. They get along great. DC and Rogan are really putting together a good little friendship. DC, I mean, he's got Ariel. He's got Rogan. DC is really setting himself up well moving forward in this business. And I like that. I like Anik, Rogan, and DC as a record company, label, as a crew. I like them as all. All right, guys, there you have it. Oh, one last thing. Bonuses. Let's talk about performance bonuses on the evening. They are, in the words of the great Dennis Green, the late great, rest in peace, Dennis Green, they are who we thought they were. We got Alex Perez in his victory over Jussier Formiga with the KO. We got Sean O'Malley with his knockout win over Eddie Wineland. We got Aljamain Sterling choking out Cory Sandhagen. And we got Cody Garbrandt knocking Raphael Assuncao into Bellator. He knocked him into the Contender Series. Wherever you want to put Raphael Assuncao after getting knocked out, that's where he is. And for his troubles, for all their troubles, 50 G's, baby. Dana, 50 G's. So, guys, there you have it. First episode, Fight Night Picks Recap Show. Let us know what you think. Let us know what we need to add. As always, make sure that you are following all of the relevant people at Fight Night Picks. You're following Craig Allen at Craig Allen FNP. You're following John Franklin, yours truly, at SM Cornerman. Follow Matt Allen. Follow subscribe to YouTube. There will be more of this coming. I will talk to you guys soon. Peace.